We really believe that it's important and critical to bring in the real voice of the customer, the voice of the consumer into those decision-making processes, whether it's early on, in the middle, or towards the back end of the innovation cycle.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by my guest, Rob Holland, based in Chicago, and he's the CEO at Feedback Loop. Welcome, Rob. Good to have you on, man.
Great to be here.
Now, what you guys provide is a research technology platform for rapid, quick consumer feedback. And your aim, if I understand correctly, is to provide reliable consumer insight for those product managers and researchers out there. Your mission statement that I pulled from your site says to help companies thrive by learning faster and innovating smarter. Tell me, what does that mean?
That's a great question. So, the way we think about it is the world is just changing so fast, and the consumer is changing so fast, and it's really, really hard. It's getting harder and harder for companies to just keep up and stay connected to their consumers and their customers. Yeah. So one of the big things that we found is a real benefit and a real need is there's so many decisions that have to be made faster, and they have to be made, and they have to just be implemented very quickly. The data revolution, so much is made on gut feel, or there's an abstraction from the end customer. So we want to be able to provide the right type of research, the right type of consumer insight to product owners, to researchers, to other business owners, so that they can make decisions faster.
Let me ask you, before, people are always needing insight, right? They were always needing to be able to, for leaders to be able to make the right choices with the right data they had. Before, what were they doing? Like, what is the typical approach, and how are you guys approaching this to solve this problem?
So I think there's two things going on. What companies would do is that they'd go to research experts to actually help them solve a problem, and those researchers would run studies or programs, or go to research agencies to actually conduct studies. So these would take weeks, and they would cost a lot of money. So it would be really, you'd have a few bullets, and you'd be able to use them really judiciously. Otherwise, what you're doing is what we love to call is dot voting. And we've all been in the conference rooms when we're doing a brainstorming session, and everybody puts a bunch of things on the whiteboard, and then you get a bunch of sticky notes, and everyone goes and votes on what the best idea is, and you go. And many, many big decisions are made that way. We really believe that it's important and critical to bring in the real voice of the customer, the voice of the consumer into those decision-making processes, whether it's early on, in the middle, or towards the back end of the innovation cycle.
Are you saying that, the traditional approach would take 6, 8, 12 months to do the research, you finally get it back, and then you can use those points really quickly? But if you want to make faster decisions, there is another option. So like if you have a meeting on Friday, you could have solutions the next week, or answers, insights the next week?
Absolutely. And that is it. It would take days, weeks. It would actually take weeks or months typically to get studies done. And that is too slow, right? So you're flying blind, because you have to make the decisions. By the time you get the research back, the decision point is past. And so the luxury of time is just becoming less and less. And so it's really important to get that information. If you have to make a decision next week, you can run a study, and within 2 to 3 days, get all the information you need back, come in informed, and at least make a more informed decision on how to move forward.
So let's take an example here, a use case. We talk about where we are right now, COVID, pandemic, being able to make decisions based off of the available data faster is going to be important. How could you apply in this type of scenario what you guys do?
So a real good example, one of our customers, we work with the Ad Council, and the Ad Council works with a whole bunch of brands. And one of the big initiatives that Ad Council is working on is how to get the population today comfortable with vaccinations. So they're working with all these different brands who are trying to put together all these programs, and Ad Council is helping to bring that together and synthesize it. So they're testing different types of messages, down to what's the message, what's the tone, what's the language that's used for different consumer segments because not one message resonates with everybody. And they're able to put out a number of concepts and run those tests in very rapid order and get immediate feedback that they can then go down a path or stop and change course in real time, and do that in a really urgent environment where an initiative has to get taken out.
And against doing something in the old way would take weeks and weeks and months, but it doesn't have to be that way in this type of scenario?
Yes, either would take weeks and weeks or months, or it would also, the alternative was you'd be in a room and everybody would be brainstorming ideas and you dot vote. And then what you're doing is you're getting experts' opinions, but you're not really getting the voice of the customer, the voice of the consumer that you're really going after. And bringing that direct voice in through technology today is so much, it's possible. So the ability to provide that is game changing.
Now, for the typical companies you work with is definitely the B2C area, not so much in the B2B, because you have a lot of consumers, a lot of people you're needing to be able to get insights from. Help me understand another potential use case. I feel like you work with all size companies as well. Like,
yes, we do.
One small 100-person shops to, like, what's the range?
So we work from startups that are trying to go direct to consumer, for example, all the way up through Fortune 100, Fortune 50 customers. So we really cover the span of all different needs, because the universal need is consistent. If you're working with consumers, even if you're a B2B2C company, but if your end game is consumers, there's just an insatiable amount of questions to be had. We do work in healthcare. We do work in financial services, consumer finance. We're doing work with insurance. We're doing work in media. You think about streaming changes in media consumption. We're doing work with CPG, and then a whole host of other industries as well.
This concept, you've referenced it twice now, of just on a whiteboard, just dotting the opinions of what everybody is, and then you make a decision. Some could argue that your gut or innovative ideas is better than consumer feedback. How would you reply and respond to someone with that type of feeling?
I would say that's a fair point. So why not test both? Because it's easy enough to do both, and then see if there's an inconsistency. And if there is, then test again to understand why. And if there isn't, go.
It's like more data and more insight doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing.
That's
being able
right.
to compare your gut reaction. That's
right. As long as it's fit, we want it to be fit for use, which means it's appropriate, it's scaled, and it is sufficient for the need at hand. And there are many cases where there's sophisticated research that's very complex and that is, takes time. There's total appropriate use cases for that. But many, many, many decisions are being made without any input, any data. And we found a way to really bring the voice of the customer into those decisions and do it in an iterative way so that you can move forward and just go and progress.
Let's talk about your actual technology platform itself. How does it work? How is that different from, then again, you're going to a research organization or company that goes off and does it versus a platform that someone themselves can use, a research analyst?
So our platform is designed to be used by researchers or business owners with their product people or marketers, or even in innovation and insight. So we kind of have a business arm, which we tend to call product, and the consumer insights or research arm. But it's really meant to democratize on all ends. And we try to make it fast, easy, and reliable so that it can be used by the businesses with the sanctions of the researchers, or it can be used by researchers more quickly to support and keep up with the business needs that are out there. So that's the underlying principle. What we've tended to do is there are multiple steps to create a study, and we're focused in on doing Agile surveys, consumer surveys. So that's really what our platform sweet spot is at this point. And so what we've done is we've decomposed the different steps that you would take to run a project, from creating a test hypothesis, to designing a questionnaire, to figuring out what type of audience to source and response, to creating the survey, to running the survey, to aggregating the data, to publishing the data in a dynamic way, quantitatively and qualitatively, and then being able to distribute that information. So we've taken all those steps and integrated them into one technology platform that can run it end to end and do that in very rapid fashion. So we can create a study and kick it off, go find 300, 500 people, get them to respond, process through that, and turn it all back, usually inside 3 days, sometimes less.
3 days or less, being able to do all of that. Help me understand the history, and how has the company changed over the years, and where is it headed going from here?
It's a great question. So we've been on this journey for about 5 years. Our founder, Thor Ernsten, he grew up in the gaming. He was a coder for gaming. And so talk about rapid development, agile development. That's where the whole agile product development really began. And just getting rapid feedback, deploying and adjusting in real time to make decisions on where to take product. That was his idea. And the research, typical research, you couldn't even play in that space. So he figured that that's a big need with digital transformation, changes in consumer technology, the generational shifts that are just going on, these mega trends that are just changing the way people react to technology and the way data is used just everywhere. He saw a need here that there's greater demand for insights than the current supply chains projects, really technical, heavy duty studies could provide. There was this gap in the market, and he saw that as a need, unmet need. So we started with that as our DNA. And then what we've done is we just start to evolve it and bring it out to where it's not just teams that are sort of on their own, doing their own, business teams doing their own thing, whether they're product teams or marketers working on messaging. The researchers started to connect to that as well, particularly as we started gaining traction. And they wanted to understand, well, what is this? Is this sort of rogue research, so to speak? How do you think about that? And it became clear that for our best customers, we started to see the research teams and the business teams were collaborating, and the research teams were able to embrace the platforms and the whole agile research concept and really engage it. And when we started making that connection, it really opened up the whole business for us to start thinking about transforming the way research is done, not just on the outer edges, but really at its core.
Help me understand it. Typically for the research department and the business side, do they not generally get along or talk enough, or is there not enough integration?
There's a whole spectrum here, but there's a natural tension. If you think about it. So the businesses are trying, their tasked with just getting their jobs done and trying to move as quickly as they can. Researchers, that's a really important function for them. They're smart, they're experts, they can help provide really valuable inputs in direction, help shape direction when it's done well. And they also have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the businesses aren't just running wild, and that does happen. I'm a line operator. I've had the opportunity to run a little wild. I've also been on the research side, and so there's a bit of a natural tension. In many cases, the traditional or conventional research philosophies and approaches tend to be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more thorough, a little bit more just precise, and sometimes you just need about right or good enough, or you need to have some information to guide you to keep moving, and you can't wait. And so there's this tension of can't keep up, flying blind. It's a business of flying blind. Researchers can't keep up. That creates a tension. And what we're trying to do is create a platform. What we are doing is creating a platform, and as part of a bigger movement towards agile research, where we can bridge those gaps and create positive feedback loops within those organizations, as well as feedback loops between businesses and their consumers.
Are you moving towards almost a collaboration platform for researchers and business folks to be able to be in the same place? Is that how the vision is?
That's actually what we do. So yes, and I think that's really going forward, really building deep, more complex or sophisticated agile research collaboration tools to allow business and the research side to come together and to really make the best decisions they can for their customers and their businesses.
What are researchers? We'll start with them for a moment. What do they really care about? And like, what are they looking for?
They really want to make sure that when when data is being presented to help inform a decision, that it is quality data and it's really not false positives.
Mhm.
Really, that's the key. It just comes down to that at the end of the day. That's the primary objective. So they want to use the best information that can possibly be brought together to make a business decision. And best doesn't necessarily mean deepest, biggest, most thorough. It is really the right amount of data to make the decision at hand, given the need for speed, the actual table stakes of the decision. There are one-way door, two-way doors, as Basil likes to talk about. If they're reversible, if they're irreversible, if there's a certain amount of investment behind it or not. So there's really, you have to kind of gauge it. And we're trying to create more and more tools and platforms so that there's an easy way to collaborate and align on that and use our tool for those purposes, which there are many of, where there's nothing right now. So people are dot voting and flying blind, or they're not moving fast enough because they're waiting for something.
So let me ask you, I don't know if this is a hard question or not, but how do you fight against false positives or being able to ensure the accuracy of data when you're being able to produce it at this speed?
Well, that is a really good question. And so, what we think about is we are looking at our surveys typically will collect information between 100 to 300, maybe 400 people, right? So we are using sample sizes that are statistically relevant for the types of surveys we're doing. We keep our questionnaires pretty tight. Usually it's around 10 questions or less. We can do qualitative and quantitative so that there's a balance there. And we have a research team that also works and supports our customers and can help think about survey design and quality, and we bake that in. We also go very much after quality inputs. So we have a lot of quality checks from the data we get in, the respondents, to make sure that they're viable respondents and they're appropriate. And we do a lot of machine learning to kind of clean the information and bring it back. So, we really we take that responsibility is critical to what we do, and it's table stakes. So we're focused on that quite deeply.
You're utilizing, it sounds like, with technology, both of the platform for gathering and bringing it in, and using machine learning to be able to process it faster. But so it's using technology as a platform, but it's always monitored and ensured by real people inside your company that is working, and you're helping them even put the right questions in the first place. Did I get that right?
We can do that. Yes, we do. And we also have an open back end so that if the end user, whether it's a business user or a researcher, wants to go in and dig in, and they're not comfortable with some of the responses, they can pull those out and they can do their own cleaning and editing and put their final quality checks, because they all have different levels of tolerance. And so we provide that flexibility as well.
For business leaders out there, what advice or word of wisdom would you be giving them in light of today's environment and world we're in, when it comes to being able to have agile data and insights fast? What advice would you be giving?
Wow. So I think the most basic thing I would say is these needs existed because of the mega trends that I had talked about: digital transformation, generational change, technology. Consumer technology is just changing the way people live, and that's been happening and accelerating for a long time. Now that we're in the COVID and post-COVID world, it's literally like a tsunami that's hit. That every single human being in the face of the earth has some change in their life. So there are definitely going to be changes, and they're not linear, and they're not necessarily obvious, and there will be unintended consequences or cumulative effect changes as well. So for the foreseeable future, anyone who's working with consumers needs to make sure it's critical to make sure that you're watching and validating your core assumptions about your customers and your product and your offering and their needs. And then you're looking for and identifying for new opportunities. I think of it as like, imagine you're on a surfboard and you're trying to run your business as if you're on a surfboard. The water underneath you is unstable. You're trying to stay on it. You're watching over your back to make sure you don't get crushed by a wave, and you're keeping your eyes open for that next wave that's coming and to make that quick move. You need to have tools, business processes, and capabilities to enable you to do that. And Agile research is a massive enabler. If you're making decisions flying blind, if you're not voting, if you're not getting direct feedback from consumers and your customers to make decisions that affect them, you're missing out. You're missing out on risks and you're missing out on opportunities. And the capability is here now to be able to enable you to do that. I wouldn't accept flying blind anymore.
Going forward, what do you see it looking like? How frequently do you see a business leader doing these agile research insights? I mean, how often is it monthly? Is it weekly? I mean, what does it look like?
It is really situation specific. We a great example I'll give you a great customer example. So it is as much as you need it to be, but I'll define that and I'll give you an analogy as well. So one of our customers, Farmers Insurance, they're a 130-year-old plus company, typically go through agents to get insurance. That whole insurance world's been turned upside down with direct to consumer. You're probably familiar with Lemonade, and they created an app, and like all the traditional insurers were kind of caught by that in some way, right? And so Farmers spooled up an innovation team called the Toggle team, and they went out, the innovation team, they created Toggle, which is their app, and they basically had to go direct to consumer and break 135 years of history, and they had to do it in rapid order. And so we partnered with them, and we were fortunate to partner with them. And in a matter of 6 months, they ran over 145 tests. They talked to hundreds of thousands of consumers, and they were able to start to really just understand things from what should we call our brand name to different language we're using, going after a millennial and Gen Z. How do we go direct to consumer? How do we change language in the contracts? How do we make it easy for someone to understand? And they cut that development cycle down by they said they saved over a year's worth of development time, and they made really important decisions that they would run rapid order. So sometimes you're running multiple tests in a week, and sometimes you're coming out of a brainstorming session, you come up with 30 tests, 30 ideas, you test those ideas, you get it down. So it really does flow. And the way I think about it is, imagine if when you're going on a journey today in a car. So now we all go on Apple Maps or Google Maps. You plot in your path, you get it all set up, and you're going. And you get on the road, and suddenly it starts raining really hard. You have your map, you know where you're going, but suddenly you need more feedback. What do? You turn on your windshield wipers, and you get rapid, instantaneous, not perfect feedback, but enough to keep your eyes on the road, to keep the window clear, to make sure you don't crash into anybody, run anybody over, or go off the beaten path. So you have this intermediate feedback that's helping you get this bigger journey. And that's really what I think the real power of this is. So if whatever you need, you have the ability to do it. You can, as frequently or infrequently as the business requirements are, you have a tool at your disposal where you can just turn it on and go. You don't need to do big, heavy studies. You don't need to go outsource with a bunch of third parties. You don't need a subject matter expert that's so technical that you can't move forward. You remove the roadblocks to be able to have that ability to be as agile as you need to be, to ride that surfboard and make sure you find that next wave and don't get crashed by something underneath you because you don't see it.
I love that analogy, by the way. What is the most exciting feature or what can you share on your roadmap of where you're headed from here that you'd want to share?
I'll talk about something that we actually discussed today at my executive team meeting. We had a team come in, and what we've done is use some really interesting machine learning and data science to really take natural language processing and sentiment type of analysis to another level. We've introduced a feature called broad search. Typically when you do search, typically in our surveys, there'll be a number of quantitative questions where you pick like rank 1 to 5 or yes, no's, and then you'll get some open-ended questions where you get responses. And you do that with 200-300 people, you get a lot of responses. And so one of the big challenges of doing consumer survey work is to kind of cull through all those responses and figure out what's going on. So we have a search capability in our platform that's a literal search. You type in, you type in a word. We would talk about travel examples, so it was like safety, and you get some sort of responses, anything that says safety in it, right? Or maybe another word or two that's familiar with safety. Now we've created this thing called broad search, where you type in safety and it pulls themes out and it brings whole responses back. And it's much broader than safety. And we're using algorithms that really score the words and put numerical values on words, and then and they kind of nest those words next to each other so that you can get whole responses back. And it's been game changing already because it just helps you synthesize through the analysis of that to get to the real essence very, very quickly. And something that could take hours could take seconds now. And that's a great example of how we're automating and reducing friction and using technology to help us routinize and reduce time so that we can be faster, easier, and reliable.
The usage of natural language understanding is impressive, where it's being integrated. And this is a beautiful use case for its power, where a business leader can real time search through that 300-400 results that came back from different people submitting and get not just exact words, but sentiment and the larger concepts, and getting those answers where you would normally in the past have to actually listen to each one to be able to pull those insights out.
That's absolutely right. And we're just getting started. I see the ability to integrate video more aggressively and read faces and be able to bring snippets of that, and then search and really bring platform type search across many of the different studies you're running, and create libraries of benchmarks across multiple studies, and really start to get to take advantage of learning what's going on and pick up broader themes. And that's really what we're excited about going over time.
Now, your past, Rob, you've been in the business and consumer world for a while. I think I see you also at Oracle and Nielsen Company. How have you seen research and insights change over the years, and what do you see as kind of the future on how technology is going to be intersecting, both helping it or maybe even hurting it?
Yeah, I've been around for a while. So I started out in the world of consumer product goods with the Clorox company, and then also in consumer retail with Safeway, before I went to Nielsen, where we started getting into the consumer research side. And then Datalogix, Oracle, which was all about ad tech, again, driving advertising to consumers, and then MarTech with consumer personalization. So I've been hanging around the consumer my whole career. I could give you a really stark example of something. When I started out, which is, in the 80s, late 80s, at the Clorox company, which is a great company doing amazing things. And again, with COVID, their products have just taken on a whole another dimension. But when early on in my career, the company was getting ready to launch Clorox detergent, which is going to go up against Tide. And it was a massive, big bet. And back then we used to do research by running test markets and mini markets, where we would take over a whole city, produce the product, put it into the shelves, run advertising, test, all kinds of testing. And these were multi-million-dollar investments that took months and months and months. Meanwhile, the competition's watching everything you're doing, and they're creating their response plans. and then you go and you launch. And it was a really painful launch for the Clorox company at that time, and it cost tens of millions of dollars, manufacturing plants and other things. In love Clorox. That was 30 years ago. Nobody's there now. We don't make those mistakes anymore. And what we've done is we've de-risked it by bringing technology in and making faster decisions, more informed on smaller bets. But that's just the way the industry worked. Even Nielsen started out doing test markets and mini market support. And they were doing diary type work, and now it's all online research and it's mobile. So technology is allowing everyone in the consumer space to get closer to consumers, and it's allowing consumers to have a more direct voice into their brands and into the business and companies that they work with. And so really creating new methods and new technologies, using technology to create new methods and innovating so that we can make the voices that are out there and the questions that exist on the demand and the supply side, bringing those together in a more efficient way just really helps make a more efficient market. And that's really what's happening. And the pace of change is just happening dramatically as well. So, all this is all feeding together, and it's just part of what's happening everywhere in life anyway, because of those mega themes of consumer technology, informed consumers, just expectations are changing across the board, and we have to adapt in business for that, or we run the risk of really either, watching our businesses completely fall apart or being disintermediated rapidly and making bad choices. So we want to help make good choices.
We like making good choices. Last question for you, Robin, just kind of a fun one. Are there any current books that you're reading or read in the past, or podcasts or audiobooks that you're listening to that you would recommend for other business leaders?
Failure is Not an Option by Gene Kranz. Gene was the head of mission control for NASA from the beginning of the space program through the early parts of the space shuttle. So he gives you a long bird's eye view of what went on during the whole path from beginning through getting someone on the moon and beyond. It's a great expose on how the whole program evolved from Gemini through Mercury through Apollo. And it really talks about each of the missions, what their goals were, what each mission was expected to accomplish, and how it built on, and they learned from and iterated to go from the first steps to getting a rocket out into space to getting someone on the moon and back alive. It's a phenomenal story. It's full of courage, ingenuity, persistence, hard work, and just great drive to accomplish the impossible and to do it as quickly and as effectively as humanly possible. Gene is the person, if you've seen the movie Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks, Gene played mission control leader by Ed Harris. So that gives you a visual of what Gene was all about. Anyway, it's a great long read. It just shows you how hard work, iteration, and just constant pushing, you can achieve great things and overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. Love the book, highly recommend it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for both your insights and be able to dig into what is this new world of Agile research insight. For those that want to learn more, definitely go to feedbackloop.com. You'll be able to watch some videos that they have there, get a demo, and go to uptechreport.com to get this full interview if you're watching this from somewhere else. And Rob, this was a pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Great to be here.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.